Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. High in the wild Utah mountains, one man's dream of building a private ski haven turns into an all-out war with a ruthless HOA queen. Sabotage, lawsuits, secrets. He just wanted peace, but they picked the wrong mountain to mess with. Welcome to Danbro Ridge. I never thought I'd settle down again. Not really. For years, my life had been a rotating carousel of mountain peaks, survival gear, and temporary addresses scribbled in notepads. I'd built ski routes in Norway, rescue systems in British Columbia, and once froze half my beard off testing a lift in Idaho. But when my uncle passed and left me his land near Silver Fork, Utah, I felt the kind of gravity I hadn't in a long time. 120 acres on the eastern slope of the Wasatch Mountains. Pines thick as cathedral walls, snow that fell soft but deep, and ridgelines that caught morning light like stained glass. It wasn't just land, it was terrain with personality. And in that terrain, I saw a plan, a small private ski base. Nothing flashy, nothing corporate. One lift, 2 runs, a rustic but modern alpine chalet for winter guests, summer hikers, and those seeking altitude without attitude. I wasn't trying to carve a resort into the mountain. I was trying to carve a legacy. The land came with history, used to be a cattle ranch generations back, had its own access easement, separate utilities, and most importantly, its own damn parcel number, which meant I didn't answer to any HOA, community covenant, or bored retirees with nothing better to do than patrol fences with binoculars. Just me, the mountain, and the blueprint in my head. Getting permits wasn't exactly easy. The county didn't have a ski hermit rebuilding an eco-dream checkbox on their forms, but the officials were fair. I hired a proper team. We did our due diligence, geotechnical surveys, environmental impact reports, and even a migratory bird analysis just to be safe. Everything came back clean. In fact, one county guy told me during the site review, "You're the first developer we've had who doesn't treat the woods like trash." I took that as a badge of honor. By early September, we had the green light. Crews arrived with equipment. The base platform for the lift was prepped. Concrete trucks rolled up the access road. I watched it all unfold from my Airstream parked on a small ridge just above the build site. Every time a truck came into view, I felt like I was watching something I'd only dreamed about finally take shape. Down in the valley, about a mile and a half away, sat the Timberline Overlook community, a neatly clipped pine-needled nest of million-dollar cabins and matching mailboxes. I'd driven past them once when I came up for a zoning hearing. They looked like they'd been cloned in a factory that specializes in smugness. I didn't think much of them, didn't need to. My land wasn't part of their gated utopia. Hell, I wasn't even visible from half their lots. And yet, on the 4th day of concrete pouring, one of my workers came up to me with a puzzled look. Some guy in a Patagonia vest was down at the bottom of the ridge filming us with his phone. Said he was part of the community board, and we needed to check in. I laughed. "Did you tell him this isn't a Starbucks drive-thru?" "I told him you'd call if it mattered." The worker shrugged. He left, muttering something about visual pollution. I didn't think much of it. There's always one nut job with a drone or a clipboard. Comes with the territory. But the next morning, a white Range Rover rolled up to the bottom of the access road, and a woman stepped out with a clipboard, oversized sunglasses, and the gait of someone used to winning arguments with customer service managers. She didn't come all the way up, just stood there, waving like she was expecting a valet. When I finally walked down, after finishing my damn coffee, she introduced herself. "Karen Woolsey," she said crisply, "president of the Timberline Overlook HOA. We need to talk." "Oh," I said. "About what?" "About the disruption your construction is causing," she replied, as if we were discussing an overdue library book. "We weren't notified." "You wouldn't be," I said. "You're not the county, and this land isn't part of your HOA." "Well, that's something we're not so sure about," she said, flipping a few pages on her clipboard. "Your property borders our view corridor. We have landscaping standards." I stared at her, stunned. "You think your HOA extends to what people can do on other people's private land because you can see it? It's a quality of life issue," she said, unfazed. "We're concerned about noise, visual disturbance, traffic. There's no architectural oversight here. Frankly, it feels unneighborly." "Lady," I said, "my nearest neighbor is a damn moose. You don't get to veto concrete trucks because they interrupt your lavender meditation playlist." Her lips thinned. We'll be contacting you formally. And she did. The next day, I got a certified envelope, HOA letterhead, a formal demand to cease all construction until I could confirm compliance with architectural and communal standards as outlined in the Timberline Overlook HOA Covenant Charter. I nearly choked on my coffee from laughing. I drafted a reply on the back of the demand letter, scanned it, and emailed it back. Dear Ms. Woolsey, I am not, have never been, and will never be a member of your HOA. My land is not under your jurisdiction. Do not contact me again unless you plan to apologize or relocate. Sincerely, the guy not in your neighborhood. I didn't hear anything else that week, but I knew, deep in my gut, that this wasn't over. People like Karen don't let things go, especially not when they think you've stepped outside a line they imagined into existence. The official cease and desist letter was barely a week old when the second envelope arrived. Same HOA letterhead, this time thicker, printed in color, with highlighted sections and a very serious-looking attachment labeled Urgent Notice of Architectural Noncompliance. I didn't know whether to laugh or laminate it. This time, they'd upped their game. The letter accused me of constructing a commercial operation that may threaten the tranquility and visual harmony of the Timberline Overlook community, and demanded that I submit for review a complete architectural proposal and aesthetic impact assessment. It went on to suggest that my project was in potential violation of shared ecological stewardship agreements and posed unknown consequences for property values and community serenity. Now, let's be clear, none of this had anything to do with the law. It was pure HOA gobbledygook, puffed up with legalese to scare folks who didn't know a plat map from a pot roast. Unfortunately for them, I did. My land was platted and recorded decades before Timberline Overlook was even a twinkle in some luxury developer's eye. No easements, no overlapping governance, no jurisdiction. Still, I figured they'd try again. And they did. Louder. Karen Woolsey started showing up near my access road more frequently. Never crossing onto the property, she wasn't stupid, but always just close enough that I could see her standing there with her oversized sunglasses and clippered like a suburban Sauron scanning Mordor for code violations. One time, she brought 2 other HOA board members with her. One of them pointed up the ridge at my nearly finished lift base and shook his head dramatically. It was like they thought disapproval could melt concrete. Then came the emails. Dozens. Not directly to me, of course. I had blocked their address after the first round, but to the county, to zoning, to building safety, to the environmental board. One guy from the air quality division called me, apologizing in advance, and said, "I've got 4 duplicate complaints here from someone named Karen about your diesel generators. Can you just send me a photo of your emissions filter setup?" "No problem," I told him. "It's a Tier 4 Final Cummins. I could run it inside a Whole Foods and nobody would smell it." I sent the photo. The complaint was dismissed. The next day, another department called. It became a game. I'd get an email or a call about a community concern. Noise, erosion, wildlife disturbance, scenic damage, too many trucks on the access road, and within hours, I'd shoot back documentation proving I was in compliance. Permits, surveys, engine specs, slope stabilization diagrams. You name it, I had it. Meanwhile, Karen went public. She launched a petition titled, in bold, all caps horror, "Stop the illegal mountain destruction, save our landscape." She framed it like I was clear-cutting Yosemite and paving it over with fast food joints. The petition circulated in Timberline Overlook's Facebook group, which I wasn't part of but definitely had a mole in. My cousin Maria, who lives down valley, sent me screenshots every day, like a digital resistance courier. "Look at this," she texted one morning, attaching a post from Karen. "If this project is allowed to continue, our children may never again see the ridge as nature intended. We must stand united against reckless expansion." Children. It was a patch of forest with 1 dirt road and an outhouse full of wasps. Not exactly Eden. Then came the community meeting. They held it at the Timberline Overlook Lodge. Gated, of course, but someone leaked me the agenda. The first item? Discussion of unauthorized construction near Timberline perimeter. The second, motion to retain legal counsel for community protection. That's when I knew she wasn't just tilting at windmills. She was organizing a crusade. My lawyer, Todd, a local guy with a beard like a Civil War general and a personality to match, advised me to keep documenting everything. This is targeted harassment. They're trying to wear you down through sheer nuisance. But if they slip up and claim jurisdiction, we'll bury them. I don't want to bury anyone, I told him. I just want to build my damn lift. Then stay clean, keep receipts, and don't give them anything they can use. We doubled down. Upgraded fencing around the construction zone, put up private property signs every 50 feet, installed a gate camera and a motion-activated trail cam facing the ridge. I even hired a retired Forest Service ranger named Carla to monitor the tree line for unauthorized hikers or accidental trespasses. Carla carried bear spray and a Nikon. She didn't smile much, which I appreciated. And yet, somehow, every day it felt like I was being invaded without a single toe crossing the line. The HOA didn't need laws. They had perception. Their weapon was narrative, and Karen was a sniper with a smartphone. But they were also sloppy and arrogant. That's when something strange happened. One evening, while I was checking site equipment logs in my trailer, I heard a knock. Not a Karen knock, this was more tentative. I opened the door to see a man in his 50s, windbreaker zipped up to his chin, holding a file folder. "You don't know me," he said. "Name's Joe Elliott. Used to be on the Timberline board." I just stared at him. I quit 6 months ago," he continued. "Didn't like where things were going. Thought it was about pool maintenance and snow plowing. Not, this." He handed me the folder. "What's this?" "Emails, meeting notes, internal messages." "You're not crazy. Karen's been pushing this for months. Some of us pushed back. She pushed harder." I flipped through the folder. Printed emails with timestamps, subject lines like "contain the ridge," "impact narratives," "outside influence." My name appeared several times. Danbro Project, visibility risk, symbolic threat. "You're not alone," Joe said. "But you'll need proof." And just like that, I had a witness. A mole from the inside. Someone who knew where the bodies were buried, or at least where the HOA buried its complaints. Karen thought she was playing a game of pressure and patience. She didn't know I'd just been handed a match. All I needed now was fuel. I wasn't the kind of guy to play politics. I'd spent too many years on mountain ridgelines where bluffing got you killed and facts were carved in snow and stone. But now, with a folder full of HOA dirt and a war brewing in the valley, I realized I wasn't just building a ski base. I was being drafted into a full-blown territorial campaign, with Karen Woolsey cast as the self-appointed general of HOA ground forces. The week after Joe Elliott handed me the folder, things got weird. Not HOA letterhead weird, violence in the night weird. It started small. A jerry can of diesel went missing from our supply trailer. Then one morning I found the ignition wiring on the site generator half stripped. At first, I chalked it up to local vandals or bored teenagers, but that theory didn't last long. Carla, my hired watchwoman, spotted fresh tire tracks across the soft snow near the storage containers, tread patterns that didn't match any of our vehicles. Someone was coming onto my land at night. I put up more trail cams, concealed better this time. We upgraded the padlocks. My construction foreman started sleeping in his truck with a 9M under the seat. Then came the spray paint. One morning I walked out to check the main frame of the chalet and saw it. Giant red letters scrawled across the plywood face. "Stay off our mountain." The paint was fresh. The footprints led into the trees and vanished in hard crust. I don't scare easy. I've faced down avalanches and ice storms that would make most people cry for their mothers. But this was different. This wasn't nature pushing back. This was someone with a grudge and a little too much time on their hands. The final straw came on a Thursday before dawn. I was sipping coffee outside the trailer when I heard a crunch of gravel and then a sudden metallic thunk. One of the site workers came sprinting from the switchback. "They hit the damn tractor," he shouted. We rushed over. A diesel-powered tractor, nearly brand new, had a fist-sized dent punched into its side, just above the tracks. Near its rear wheel lay a length of heavy logging chain, embedded with homemade steel spikes. Someone had set a literal trap, and by some miracle it hadn't taken out a leg or worse. That was it. No more patience. I pulled the footage from the trail cams and checked timestamps. On the grainy clip from just before 4 a.m., I saw a dark-colored SUV, no headlights, slow crawl, pull into the access trail, stop, and reverse out a minute later. The rear license plate was just barely visible under the frost. I zoomed, enhanced, and got lucky. Utah plates, clear enough for a partial. Carla made some calls. She still had friends in the sheriff's department from her Forest Service days. 2 days later, we got confirmation. The vehicle belonged to Tom Woolsey, Karen's husband. I stared at the report like it was written in Martian. I wanted to be surprised. I wasn't. We filed a police report. Local deputies arrived, took photos, gathered the chain and the dashcam files. I gave them a copy of the partial plate and the trail cam video. They were polite, but cautious. "You understand this might stir up a hornet's nest," one deputy said. "It's already stirred," I replied. "I just want the nest dealt with." To their credit, they moved fast. Within a week, Tom Woolsey was brought in for questioning. Not arrested yet, but officially placed under investigation for vandalism, trespassing, and endangerment. When the local news caught wind, the headline wrote itself, "HOA President's Husband Investigated in Mountain Sabotage Scandal." It spread like wildfire, and then the emails started coming, some anonymous, some from other Timberline residents. Not everyone in the HOA was on board with Karen's crusade, it turned out. One email read simply, "She's gone too far. We didn't sign up for this." Joe, my unlikely ally, reached out again. "They're starting to eat each other," he said over the phone. "Half the board wants to distance themselves before it all collapses. The other half are too scared to speak up." I wasn't interested in their mutiny. I just wanted them to stop meddling in my life. Unfortunately, Karen didn't get the memo. The very next week, just as my site crew was finally setting the first lift post, I was served a civil complaint, filed through the HOA's legal firm no less. Karen had officially sued me. The claim that I was operating an unlicensed commercial facility within visual proximity of a residential neighborhood, causing emotional and aesthetic distress to surrounding residents. I was degrading the communal harmony of the Timberline Overlook community through unauthorized activity, structural eyesores, and environmental disturbance. It was like someone had weaponized a thesaurus. I forwarded the complaint to Todd. He called back 20 minutes later and said, "Jesus Christ, she's actually doing it." "She's dragging this into court," I said. "She doesn't know what she's just stepped into." "I do," I replied, "which is why I want to go all the way. No more warnings. No more letters." That afternoon, Todd and I drafted a counterclaim: harassment, libel, malicious interference with lawful development, defamation, destruction of property, sabotage. And now, thanks to Joe Elliott, we had internal emails to prove motive. Meanwhile, up on the ridge, work continued. Slower now, more cautious. Crews were nervous. Morale dipped. Insurance premiums climbed. The vibe had shifted. We weren't just fighting altitude and weather anymore. We were fighting paranoia. But for me, there was clarity in the chaos. I finally understood what I was up against. Not just a bad neighbor, not just an overreaching HOA, but a system run by people who thought they could bend reality to their will and destroy anyone who didn't kneel to it. They wanted a war. They were about to get one. I'd never been sued before, not officially anyway. Plenty of threats, sure. A few developers angry I wouldn't sign off on risky terrain builds. One ski resort that tried to blackball me for backing out of a contract when they cut corners on avalanche prep. But this was a first. Karen's lawsuit was thick, over 60 pages, a symphony of buzzwords and faux legal indignation. Unlicensed infrastructure, threat to residential cohesion, invasion of shared visual space. She even cited a clause from her HOA charter about aesthetic integrity zones, as if that applied outside their literal damn fence. But the worst part? She wasn't just doing this to stop the project. She was doing it to bleed me dry. Drag it through months of hearings, force me to stall construction, rack up legal bills until I either gave up or went broke. It was a siege in court filings, and I knew it. What Karen didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been preparing for this moment from day one. My lawyer, Todd, had already filed a comprehensive counterclaim. We attached everything: photos of the sabotage, video of Tom Woolsey's truck, the police report, even a signed statement from one of my workers who'd been nearly injured by the spiked chain. Then came the gold. Emails from Joe Elliott, internal HOA chatter where Karen used phrases like, "Make it so miserable he packs up and sells," and "We don't need the law, we need perception." That last one, we underlined it in red. But we weren't just coming for Karen, we were coming for the whole damn HOA. Todd filed our counter lawsuit that Friday. By Monday, word had spread through the entire county. Local blogs ran with the headline, "HOA sues ski-based developer, gets sued right back for sabotage harassment." And that's when the real fun started. Karen must have realized she'd stepped too far into the public eye, because suddenly she pivoted into full-blown political candidate mode. Yard signs popped up all over Timberline. Karen Woolsey for Silver Fork Council, protect our homes. She posed in front of pine trees, smiling like a realtor, talking about community values and preserving mountain integrity. Her social media was filled with staged photos of her cleaning up trash on trails. I recognized one of my crew's dumpsters in the background, and long-winded posts about special interests buying up our ridgelines. It was so absurd it almost worked. Local news invited her to speak. She played the victim card perfectly, claimed I was a corporate-backed outsider, a developer who refused to answer to neighbors. She even said she feared for her safety because certain individuals had mobilized extremists to threaten her. Family. I'm guessing she meant Carla, my bear spray-wielding ranger with resting war face. But while Karen postured in front of cameras, we dug deeper. Joe kept passing us files, meeting minutes, Slack exports, even HOA board group texts. It wasn't just shady, it was surgical. Karen had spent months laying groundwork, encouraging board members to file complaints under different names, instructing residents how to word noise disturbance claims to get faster county response, even suggesting they record the workers and Zoom. In on Logos, it was harassment, coordinated, intentional, and now provable. We subpoenaed emails. Todd brought in a digital forensics guy from Salt Lake who confirmed the metadata matched. The court ordered both sides to enter mediation, but Todd and I had zero interest in settling. This goes to trial, I said. We bury them. The timing couldn't have been worse. For her, anyway. Election season was heating up. Karen's campaign signs were vandalized, though I had nothing to do with it. And one night, someone dumped a pile of old tires in front of her gate with a sign that said, "Who's polluting now?" A few days later, a local news anchor ran a segment titled, HOA President or Political Power Grabber. They showed clips from our lawsuit filings, redacted but still damning. They even ran a slow zoom on the phrase, "Make it so miserable he packs up and sells." That aired the same night as her town hall live stream. It didn't go well. Karen tried to salvage it, blamed her husband, claimed she didn't know about the sabotage. Then, when asked about the internal emails, she said they were taken out of context. Classic. Meanwhile, my project crawled forward, more slowly than I liked. The workers were jumpy. Our insurance had jacked up premiums due to active conflict zone conditions, which was apparently now a thing, but we pushed on. One lift post at a time, one timber beam, one bag of concrete. The mountain didn't care about lawsuits. It just stood there, ancient and indifferent, waiting to be carved with purpose. And me. I wasn't leaving. Not now, not ever. The court date was set. Civil case docketed. My name, Trevor Danbro versus Timberline Overlook HOA, and Karen Woolsey, individually. I remember reading it printed on that first court document, thinking it looked like the credits of a very slow-moving horror movie. Except now, the horror had a suit, a platform, and a campaign slogan. While the legal gears cranked forward, I kept building. Slow, heavy progress. The kind of progress that doesn't make headlines but leaves bruises and receipts. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. Her political campaign was in full swing now. Town halls, press appearances, mailers with smiling families under the phrase, "Protect our mountains." Vote Woolsey. One featured a stock photo of a child sledding in Vermont. But here's the thing about public attention. Once you invite the spotlight, you'd better not have skeletons in your shed. And Karen. She had enough to stage a full HOA Halloween parade. We received a subpoena response from one of the private contractors the HOA used for landscaping. Their internal invoices included suspicious payments marked community action support made during the exact weeks when the vandalism on my site had spiked. Todd flagged it immediately. That's either a very expensive weed-whacking session, he said, or hush money. We added it to the counterclaim under misuse of funds for purposes of targeted interference. Then Joe dropped the real nuke. It was an audio file. He emailed it with no subject line, just the file. It was a recording from an HOA board meeting held months ago, before they'd sent me the first cease and desist. Karen's voice was unmistakable. Legally, he's not under our jurisdiction. But if we keep pressure on the county, keep the narrative clean, we can buy time. Best case, he sells. Worst case, we make it so miserable he's isolated up there. There was no context that could save her from that. And now it was part of the official record. We filed an updated motion to include the recording. The judge approved it. Karen's lawyers tried to suppress it, claiming it was illegally obtained. But Joe had been a board member at the time, and Utah's recording laws didn't require two-party consent for non-private meetings. It was admissible. That same week, I got a call from a journalist at the Salt Lake Tribune. They'd been following the civil case, but now they wanted to talk about Karen's political race. I told them off the record, if she wants to make this about public values, she should start by explaining how sabotage and perjury serve the public. 2 days later, the article dropped. Council candidate accused in sabotage scandal. Internal. Recordings leak, Karen tried to spin it. Posted a lengthy Facebook diatribe about how certain parties are desperate to smear me during election season and how inflammatory recordings are being taken out of context to distract from real issues. The comments weren't kind. She started getting heckled at events. During one Q&A session at a library, someone shouted, "What's your stance on spiked chains and diesel theft?" That clip made the evening news. Meanwhile, my legal team was gathering steam. Todd was like a dog with a stake. Focused, methodical, a little terrifying. He brought in a specialist from Salt Lake, an expert in HOA abuse cases. I didn't even know that was a niche. We're building a pattern, the guy told me. This isn't just overreach. This is organized harassment. It got worse for them when 2 more Timberline residents, an older couple who lived on the northern edge of the subdivision, filed affidavits saying they'd been pressured to sign false complaints against my project. One of them, a retired schoolteacher named Evelyn, left a handwritten note attached to her statement. "We moved here for peace." Karen made it a battlefield. The court was now looking at more than just a petty property dispute. They were looking at a coordinated campaign, possibly even conspiracy to interfere with a lawful enterprise. My damages claim crossed $500,000. Karen's campaign began to crumble. One of her largest donors pulled funding. Then her husband, remember Tom, the amateur saboteur, was officially charged with criminal mischief and reckless endangerment. He took a plea deal to avoid jail time, but the damage was done. Karen withdrew from the city council race the following week. In her statement, she blamed the toxic media environment and said she wanted to focus on healing her community. No apology, no ownership, just a retreat disguised as self-sacrifice. But the lawsuit, that was still on. And now, the judge had cleared us to proceed to trial. I stood outside the courthouse that morning, watching as Karen's legal team unloaded briefcases from a black Escalade. She spotted me across the lot and gave me a look that could have frozen motor oil. I didn't smile. I just nodded. Let's go. Courtrooms have a strange smell. Not bad, just neutral. Varnish, paper, recycled air, and tension. You could bottle it and call it Justice Number 5. I'd never been inside one this packed before. It wasn't just lawyers and witnesses. The gallery had press, HOA members, residents from Timberline, even a guy from the county zoning board who probably just wanted to watch Karen get grilled. I didn't blame him. The bailiff called us in just before 10. I sat next to Todd at the plaintiff's table wearing my only suit, the one I used to wear when pitching projects to Alpine resorts before they went corporate and cold. Karen sat across the aisle in a sharp navy jacket, lips pursed, a stack of color-coded files in front of her. She looked like she was ready to scold the judge for putting the bench in the wrong place. Judge Mallory entered. Late 50s, ex-military posture, reading glasses low on her nose, and a reputation for cutting through nonsense like a snowplow through a drift. She took one look at the combined case summary, Karen's complaint, and our counter, and said flatly, "So we're here because a ski lift made someone cry. Let's proceed." Karen's lawyer went first. He gave a long, wandering speech about aesthetics, neighborhood cohesion, and community impact. He actually used the phrase emotional pollution. I could see Judge Mallory's left eyebrow rising with each new buzzword. Then it was our turn. Todd stood up, calm and deliberate. "Your Honor, this is not about zoning. It is about abuse. The plaintiff, Mrs. Woolsey, has used her position in the HOA to orchestrate a months-long campaign of obstruction, false claims, public defamation, and, most egregiously, acts of coordinated sabotage, one of which nearly caused physical harm." He laid out our evidence, like surgical tools on a tray. First, the property documents, original plats from the county showing that my land had zero connection to Timberline Overlook. We even brought in the county surveyor to testify. She pointed to maps projected on the courtroom screen, highlighted parcel boundaries, and said clearly, The Danbro property is not, and has never been, subject to the Timberline HOA. Second, the complaints. Dozens of emails from HOA board members, including Karen, submitted to various county offices under different aliases. We showed how multiple residents who had filed noise and safety complaints all traced back to the same HOA committee emails, some with identical typos. That got a visible reaction from the jury. Third, the video. We played the trail cam footage showing Tom Woolsey's SUV entering my property, then the chain, the spike trap, the tractor damage. The deputy testified to the arrest and the chain's forensic match to the truck bed. I watched Karen's face as the footage played. She didn't blink once. Then came the audio. Joe Elliott took the stand. He looked like someone who'd just walked out of witness protection, but when Todd asked if he'd ever heard Karen Woolsey discuss plans to drive me off the mountain, he cleared his throat and said, "Yes," repeatedly. She believed if they made the construction process unbearable, Mr. Danbro would fold. She called it a slow squeeze. Todd played the March recording. Legally, he's not under our jurisdiction, but if we keep pressure on the county, best case, he sells. Worst case, we make it so miserable he's isolated up there. The courtroom went dead silent. Even Karen's lawyer looked like someone had just poured cold beer down his back. When cross-examined, Joe held firm. I joined the board to help maintain roads. What I witnessed was power obsession. She weaponized the HOA. Karen's team tried to bounce back with nonsense about community values, but by then it was like trying to put out a forest fire with a teacup. One of our last witnesses was Carla, my trail-watching ranger. She testified about the intimidation, the camera footage, the property violations. Her closing line, "You don't fight a guy building a lift with a chain full of spikes unless you think you're above the law." By the time both sides rested, the air in that courtroom was thick with the weight of it all. I'd never felt so calm and so wired at the same time. Then Judge Mallory spoke. She didn't shout. She didn't grandstand. She just looked directly at Karen and said, "This case is a masterclass in overreach. Not of legal boundaries, but of personal ones." The plaintiff used a homeowners association like a battering ram, aimed at someone whose only crime was building something outside her control. The court seized through the pretense. This was not community protection. It was targeted harassment. She ruled immediately. Karen's lawsuit, dismissed with prejudice. Our countersuit, validated in full. The Timberline HOA was ordered to pay me $420,000 in damages related to delay costs, legal fees, and property loss. Karen personally was hit with a judgment of $180,000 for defamation, intentional emotional distress, and coordination of sabotage. But the real kicker? Judge Mallory referred the matter to the county prosecutor, citing strong evidence of criminal conspiracy and false statements made to public officials. Karen didn't flinch. She just nodded once, like someone holding their breath underwater. As the gavel dropped, Todd leaned over and said, "Congratulations. You just broke a suburban empire." After the ruling, everything got quiet in a way that didn't feel real, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. We walked out of the courthouse into an afternoon sun that felt almost sarcastic. Todd shook my hand with a grin that belonged more to a poker game than a courtroom. "You ever think about law school?" he asked. "Only if they let me teach chain trap jurisprudence," I said. But the silence didn't last. News of the verdict hit faster than a blizzard on an open slope. Within hours, the headlines were everywhere. Judge destroys HOA overreach in landmark ruling. Local HOA loses $600,000 in lawsuit after targeting ski builder. Council candidate hit with criminal referral in sabotage case. That last one hit hardest. Karen had barely made it to her car after court before cameras swarmed her. One local reporter asked if she intended to pay the damages or appeal. She stared ahead like she was reading instructions on how to blink. By sundown, Timberline Overlook was in freefall. At least a dozen residents posted open letters to the HOA forum. One called for Karen's immediate removal from leadership. Another simply read, "I did not sign up to fund someone's vendetta." Then came the emergency board meeting. They didn't even hold it in the lodge. They moved it to the community pool house because the main room had been compromised by media presence. Someone live-streamed it anyway. I watched it from the Airstream with Carla and a beer, popcorn in a dog bowl between us. Karen didn't show. The remaining board members spent an hour trying to calm residents, citing unexpected legal exposure and misrepresentation of executive authority. Eventually, one of them, Alan, I think his name was, finally caved and said it. We were misled. This was never about community safety. It was personal, and now it's criminal. The next morning, Karen submitted a resignation letter. Short, cold, no apology. By noon, the local paper confirmed she and Tom had put their house up for sale. The headline didn't pull punches. Woolsey resigns amid HOA collapse, faces criminal charges. But even with the victory on paper, I wasn't celebrating just yet. The site was still recovering. Gear had to be replaced, timelines restructured, contractors reassured. Insurance money helped, but morale was slow to come back. Some of the crew had been with me since Idaho. Tough guys, good people, but months of tension takes a toll. That's when something unexpected happened. One afternoon, a knock on my trailer door. I opened it and found a woman, mid-60s, salt and pepper ponytail, timberline fleece vest. Mr. Danbro? Yeah. I'm Sheila Dawson, HOA treasurer. Former. I just wanted to say, some of us tried to stop it. Karen didn't let us. We're not all like her. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. We're holding a vote to disband, she added. Too many lawsuits, too much damage. We think it's time. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed resolution and a petition signed by over 30 homeowners requesting the dissolution of Timberline Overlook HOA and transfer of remaining funds to legal mediation and site restoration grants. I didn't expect that. Later that week, Joe came by too. He looked lighter, no clipboard, no folder, just a six-pack of decent beer. You did it, he said, cracking one open. We did it. I've been asked to sit on a new county advisory board, he added, oversight on HOA accountability and property rights. Perfect, I said. Just don't let the power go to your head. He laughed. Trust me, I've seen where that leads. Back up on the ridge, the lift construction resumed at full speed. The first cabins were nearly framed, and the snow had just started its early dusting. Everything smelled like fresh timber and wet pine. Carla took her ranger chair and put it on the chalet deck with a sign that said, "No trespassing, unless you bring cookies." The team started calling the place Danbro Ridge, half joke, half respect. I didn't argue. The name stuck. On the morning we tested the lift's motor for the first time, I stood at the base, gloves in my pocket, staring up at the haul rope cutting across the trees like a thread through history. A quiet thought settled in my chest. You didn't just build it, you earned it. Opening day wasn't marked by fanfare or ribbon cutting. No press, no influencers, no speeches. Just the mountain, a steady hum from the lift motor, and a half-dozen fresh faces bundled in jackets and beanies, waiting in quiet anticipation at the base of Danbro Ridge. The morning sun came in sideways, spilling gold across the snow-covered evergreens. The new chalet stood proud behind us, timber beams still fragrant from the sawmill. Fireplace already crackling inside. The whole place felt like it was exhaling for the first time. I held my coffee with both hands and watched the lift spin, chairs gliding up the slope one by one. It was real now, not a blueprint, not a fight, not a dream glued to the inside of my skull. Real, tangible, earned. My first guests weren't corporate types or tourists with gear worth more than their cars. They were families, locals. One woman told me her kids had never been on skis before. Another guy used to work ski patrol up north and wanted to see how the little guys were doing it right. That one stuck with me. The sign by the entry gate was small, dark wood, engraved clean, Danbro Ridge, built against all odds. Below that, I'd added another private property, not part of any HO. And proud of it. For a long time, I just stood there and watched the chairs roll. The first rider, a little girl in pink snow pants and a helmet 3 sizes too big, grinned at me as she floated past. "Hi!" she yelled. I waved back. It would have been enough, but then came the letters. I got one from the county. Official letterhead. They wanted to recognize Danbro Ridge as an example of sustainable, small-scale alpine development. Offered to list it in their seasonal ecotourism guide. I said yes. Then one from the Attorney General's office. Karen Woolsey had officially been indicted on charges of submitting false claims to a public official, conspiracy to commit property damage, and misuse of community funds. Tom pled guilty and took a deal, community service, and a steep fine. Karen, as far as I knew, had left Utah altogether. Last I heard, she was living in Arizona trying to run a boutique Airbnb, some HOA horror story in reverse. And then came the postcard. No name, just a return address from Timberline Overlook, one of the cabins near the edge. It read, "Thank you for standing your ground. We didn't know how much we needed someone to say no. Enjoy the view." We sure do. I pinned it above the fireplace. As winter deepened, the trails got busier. Not crowded, never crowded, but alive. I'd open the chalet on weekends, serve hot cocoa, let kids warm up by the fire. Some of the crew stuck around, Carla especially. She'd walk the perimeter in the early morning like some mountain sentinel, still armed with bear spray and sarcasm. The HOA disbanded. The Timberline residents voted overwhelmingly to dissolve it. What little money remained in their account was divided. Part went to restitution, part went into a trust fund for regional trail maintenance. A handful of the original members tried to resurrect a neighborhood committee, but no one showed up. Joe Elliott joined the new county advisory board. I hear he's pushing for legislation to limit HOA reach in unincorporated zones. He sends updates every month, usually signed, "Still not wearing a tie. Still proud of it." The funny thing is, I don't hate the valley, even after everything. I drive past Timberline sometimes, headed down for supplies. It looks quieter now, less tense, more normal. Maybe the war broke something that needed to be broken. Back at the ridge, the season rolled on. The snow came heavy in February. We dug out the lift 3 times. One of the kids who rode opening day came back and said she wanted to work as a ski tech when she grew up. I gave her a wrench and said, "Start now." And me? I stayed. Not just because it was mine, not just because of the fight, but because this place, this patch of cold air and stubborn pines, had taught me something I never learned in the Alps or hanging off a harness, that sometimes standing your ground isn't about winning, it's about planting something that lasts.